Yes! What is up, everybody, and welcome to another U.S. Men's National Team Hour. I'm Jimmy Conrad, along with Heath Pearce, and we're going to talk about all the things that we want to discuss around the U.S. Men's National Team. U.S. Soccer announced their awards for the end of the year. We just had a game against Bosnia with some of our domestic players. Is Ricardo Pepi still our best number 9 in our pool? These are the things that me and Heath are going to get into because the U.S. Men's National Team Hour begins right now. All right, everybody. Welcome to the U.S. Men's National Team Hour alongside your two former favorite former U.S. Men's. I should know that by now. I've said it about 3 million times in my life. Your two favorite former U.S. Men's National Team players, JC and HP, Hollywood Heath Pearce, that is. Now, if you're watching live on YouTube, we can't emphasize enough, hit the like button, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, leave us a comment, tell us what you want to talk about with regard to the U.S. Men's National Team. We want to discuss it with you. And then if you guys are watching, or excuse me, you're already watching on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, make sure you subscribe, you leave a comment, 5-star rating. That is all really welcomed. We appreciate you. We already see Zach in the chat saying Conradinho and Persistuta. We're still got to figure out a name with your last name, Heath.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those were good suggestions. Anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, hit all the right buttons. Make us feel good about ourselves. If you're listening, hit all the right buttons. Make us feel good about ourselves so we can keep giving you guys the goods, the free content. Heath, let's talk about what just happened with the U.S. Men's National Team. They're big. Big might be a big word. But a result, a 1-0 win over Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, we had hot takes on Saturday. We did an instant reaction after the game.
Mm-hmm.
We were throwing out a couple 4s, 4.5 out of 10 performances, including to the manager, Gregg Berhalter. You've had a couple days to reflect. Have your thoughts changed at all? Do you want to make any edits to what you were saying before? Do you want to add on to what, hot takes you had? Do you want to go extra hot, or do you want to take it and make it a little cold? Where do you want to go with this?
We could just wrap the show up now. I got nothing new to say on that game. I feel how I feel. I will say this though, Jimmy, before we go any further. Something did happen over the last few days.
Okay.
And it had nothing to do with the national team. It was actually the fact that Spotify now allows you to have a ratings. You can rate on Spotify now. So,
Sweet.
So some of our people, if they listen to this on Spotify, you can throw a rating on there. You couldn't do that before, which is a new feature that I found out about, which is pretty cool. But with regards to this U.S. versus Bosnia game, was I a bit harsh? Yes, I was harsh, but only because I think at a certain point for this national team, we have to set a standard. And that standard has been set based on the skill set of the players that we have, the generation that we're in, the fact that we are talking about the most skillful generation in our history in terms of the quality of the player, the clubs that they're playing at. All of those things are statistically better than any generation we've ever had. Therefore, I do not want to now look at these players and say, oh, it's the B team, it's the C team, they're young, they're not ready, or be nice on them, give them time. You're being brought into the national team. Gregg Berhalter got a sample size of these players, chose the team that he wanted to roll out. I was disappointed with the team that he put out there. I was disappointed with the experience. It was over-experienced. I do like the idea of some experience, but it was over-experienced for my liking. Clearly, he saw something that we didn't during that training session.
Right.
But those players that he saw during those training sessions didn't show up for me on that game day in terms of what I would have wanted to see if you're going to give them as many minutes as he gave them. And we've talked about the red card, things like that. So I still rest my case on this. I'd seen Dez, who had chucked up there my comments on I'm blanking on him now. Our central midfielder, Kellen Acosta. And Kellen Acosta I love, but I don't change the way that I feel with him. I don't need to see him 21 times in a year to know what I get out of him. And so when I saw that go up and we cut it up and put it on social, I was like, am I a bit harsh on them? I'm like, no, I'm not harsh. Do we need to see Kellen Acosta 21 or 22 times in a year? Don't. Absolutely not. Because we know what we get from him. He's been a huge contributor. He was out for 2 years. He came back, the exact same player 2 years later, has all of the things that we know that we want and need from him. I just don't need to see him at the end of the year in what we've always deemed as meaningless friendlies, because I think those are meaningless for him. Those are not meaningless for other players. And again, put it in the context of needing him to get minutes. I call BS on that. Put in some other players so we can create meaning out of those meaningless friendlies, period. Okay, I wrap up my – I already did that.
Okay, so let me say this, and I want to give a shout-out to Derp, who
you feel different?
Well, no. Well, I don't feel different, but I'll say very quickly, I want to give a shout-out to Derp, who mentioned that he thought we were being we're doing the right thing by being critical, but also, we do it in our way where I still feel like there's a tinge of positivity with us. And I appreciate that we still look at it with a little bit of a glass half full as opposed to a glass half empty. My feelings haven't changed. I thought that Zimmerman did what he's been doing. I thought he was a cut above. I thought his quality showed also just in terms of his presence. We saw Jordan Morris, I think, get some valuable minutes. Now, for him, I understand why he got minutes. We discussed it before. He's coming back from a significant injury. With regard to Kellen Acosta, don't need to see him anymore. Don't need to see Roldan, at least in this particular game. Play the kids. I wanted to see the kids. We got to see him a little bit, and they ended up setting up the goal that gave us the win. That's all.
Greg Seltzer, who's been following, I don't know if you know Greg, but Greg's a massive Ajax fan, has been way back when Yanks Abroad was talking about us, Jimmy, and that was the website to go to, was Yanks Abroad. He's been following the national team for a long time, and he actually gave Roldan good ratings as one of the standout players. And I didn't actually go in and read the article because as soon as I saw that, I was like, I don't want to. No, I'm not going to do it. But I mean, that was one where I was like, maybe I was critical. Maybe there was movements, or maybe he was trying to push the game in a way that led to turnovers. Maybe he was attempting to do things differently, and I was holding him to the lack of success of attempting to do things. But I was just like, nah, I'm not gonna let that narrative change my mind. But overall, we learned some.
What I'll say is one of the fun fallouts after the game was one of my favorite people, especially when you're talking about soccer in this country, Eric Winalda.
Oh, I knew this was coming. Yes.
And this isn't in the rundown with Dez, but his comments after the game, he was in the back of a car. I think he was taking an Uber somewhere. Okay. He lives in Las Vegas. And he basically said that, and I love Eric, but I think he might have missed this one. Not completely, but he basically said the team doesn't have any heart anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing because he had 40 seconds of more than that. But that
maybe
was
he
really
was paraphrasing.
Well, that's true.
Maybe he was paraphrasing.
Yeah, well, that felt like the crux of his messaging.
Yeah, no.
And it's tough because he cares a lot about the game in this country. And I think his voice at times is super important, just like ours can be at times. At certain times we pop in, we make our thoughts be known, where maybe our voices are elevated because we played and we're speaking for the people or speaking, I say truth to power, man. That sounds so dramatic, but there's somebody out there at least trying to hold people accountable and responsible for either playing better or doing better things off the field or whatever it may be. And this one just felt, I saw some comments on his initial post, and it was very, I have a great relationship with Eric. So I guess I'm trying to dance on this a little bit because I don't want him to hear it and then get all upset or whatever. It's not that. I think we would have, even if he came on the show, we'd have a nice, healthy discussion about it. I wonder what I guess what I say when I hear him say that the team doesn't play with any heart, I want to know what moment of the game he was looking at when he thought that, because I just didn't see the game in that way. I wasn't thinking about it through that lens or seeing the game through that lens. I was seeing it from, this is an opportunity, kind of a sink or swim opportunity for a lot of these players. And even though we didn't get a lot of those at the beginning, we got to see a few of them in the second half. And I wondered where that came from. Like what player or play did he see that really triggered that thought process in his mind? And I guess we have to get him on the show at some point to talk to him. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between, not playing with heart and not playing well. I don't think there was a lack of heart. There wasn't a lack of fight. There may have been a lack of intent or a lack of execution on things, but there wasn't a lack of energy. I think this team has always had solid energy. And when I look at, the times that they have it in qualifying, they always tend to bounce back with that energy, right? They show that. It's never been full flat performances bar the Panama match. But, half bad, half good. Half bad, half good is sort of the way that they've gone through it. But that's always because they've dug into the well of heart to get themselves out of these messes where they started flat, or perhaps they were naive, or perhaps they got kind of a gut punch. So I think that word in itself is missing the context a little bit. But I do think it was disappointing. I judge this game based on the fact that you're giving these guys a run to be able to cement themselves. And again, I know this is about minutes, and at least what Greg said about minutes and blah, blah, blah. You're giving these guys a chance and a run. And I wasn't impressed by some of the runs that I got, that I thought this was a chance wasted for other guys to get a run. It's an opportunity lost to see other players for a large sample size, or a larger sample size than a few minutes, or some injury time minutes that we actually ended up seeing some sparks from players and players taking chances. And again, like you said in our recap, the other team's tired. They're getting worn down. You're putting in fresh legs. Blah,
Well,
blah,
there's
blah,
a red
blah.
card
It's
too.
also,
That changed some things. I'm just honestly, I was reflecting on the game and thinking, okay, what's going to generate that type of quick thought, that generalization ultimately that he's going to, and I'm bringing back Winalda into this, that he's just going to say a blanket statement of the 26 guys that are in camp, they don't have heart anymore. Like, what did he see during the game? And so honestly, this is what I think it is. This is what I think it is. We come out of halftime. We know that we're up a man. And before we make subs, 15 minutes after halftime, we don't really make any adjustments, and all of our guys are playing super safe. And I'm like, that has to be it. They're either playing sideways or backwards. Nobody's taking the initiative. If we do try to take the initiative, we're doing a lot of turnovers. And in Bosnia, to their credit, looks super organized, by the way, for a team that didn't play much together in their low block. And it just looked like we didn't have that urgency. And I'm like, that must be it. That he's looking, and I said it too after in the recap, that we didn't have anybody take the game by the scruff of the neck. You know, nobody really wanted to go out there and take that responsibility and take some chances that actually led to something. I think we can all see that when people are trying to do something and make mistakes, at least they're taking that initiative. And I thought we just played really safe for that first 15 minutes. And not only is that a reflection on the players, but also on what Gregg's telling them as a coach, and also who he's putting out there. Because I thought at that point he should have changed and made subs at halftime. Like, we don't need to see another 15 minutes of players that we've already discussed. Yeah. And so I'm just trying to, through that lens of Winaldo, he was hot, man. He was upset. I'm like, what did he see?
Yeah,
and,
but
that's that very pocket that I'm talking about.
That message seemed very prepared, and he ended it with saying, "That's what happens when your whole country is a sham." And you go, okay, there's a lot of layers. To
yeah.
You know, like there, I was like, okay, let's talk about this.
I conveniently left that part out because that was getting away from the game a little bit.
Yeah. And to me, I was just like, okay, this seems like something he wanted to say for a while now, and he was waiting for the opportunity to say it, and would love to hear what his thinking is behind that. In all honesty, because you know what it's like. Anytime you post a video, you sort of post it to lose. It's the internet. Like, the internet always wins. You always lose anytime you try to take any stance, because there's not a forum to be able to have that conversation. So would love to hear what he means by that in total. But yeah, I you could call it hard. You know, I just don't see a lack of heart from these players. And I was excited with the players that came in. And again, we were talking about the fact that you have a player finish off a ball, off of a rebound. You're talking about Gomez releasing the shot and things that aren't exactly rocket science in terms of or some sort of special capability, but they made impacts, right? And creating those impacts is a real thing, and they have to be worth something. And so it just felt like, obviously, Gregg saw all these players for this long. He picked this lineup. That lineup was underwhelming. The players that did come in that we wanted to see towards the end seemed to be more impactful. Again, given the circumstances, it makes sense that they were impactful. Like you said, red card, playing up a man, a fatigued team, blah, 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 blah. But then you could have had that earlier. So, I mean, overall, I still feel like my grades and rating systems of the players I would stick to and things like that. So, you know, hopefully we get another look from some of these players. I just don't know when. I mean, have they confirmed there's no January camp, by the way?
I actually haven't heard one way or the other if there's no January camp. I think that would be a bit of a miss or a loss for us, but I think this maybe kind of filled that void a bit by having.
Well, you need an off. Some of these players need off season.
100%. They do need an off season. And speaking of one, it could be Ricardo Pepi. The guy's been under the microscope in the hot seat for a while since bursting onto the scene with the U.S. men's national team. Hasn't scored in a while. Missed a sitter against Bosnia that I think obviously would have changed our whole perspective on this game. If we just could have scored early, settled in, and played from there, we'd probably be talking about a much different performance. And the sky might not be falling on some of these performances for some of these players. Now, for anybody that wants to join in, make sure you leave us a comment after you hit like and subscribe and turn on your notifications so we can put you into the conversation. Now, the question around Ricardo Pepi is this. He's got a 5-game goal drought for the U.S. men's national team. Just one meaningful goal in his last 10 games for FC Dallas, which he scored in garbage time in a 3-1 defeat to Sporting Kansas City. To give some context, do you think he is still our default number 9? And I'm asking someone who is, I think, the conductor of the Ricardo Pepi hype train. Yeah. Where are you on this? And then I guess, secondly, who are our other options? Jordan Pefok just scored 4 goals this past weekend. Maybe put himself back in the map. I don't know, for Gregg Berhalter. Where are you on the number 9 position? And then for everybody else that's watching live, let us know. And if you're listening, hit us up at Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter and give us your thoughts.
You know, Jimmy, obviously the hardest part for me is the one player with the most consistency over the most time is the furthest probably from the team, and that's Daryl Dike. Daryl Dike scored 20 goals in 2021.
Yeah.
Right? He had 10 at Barnsley. He had 10. He had 9 and then 1 in the playoffs for Orlando. That's an incredible amount of goals for any player. And the fact that he's not even in these discussions or even being called into these, I think is a little bit problematic. And it seems like there is a January camp, by the way. It's 2 weeks leading into El Salvador. There's probably going to be some inter-squad scrimmages. Maybe you play against UCLA or I don't know, some other team. I don't know who they're going to play against. But obviously not a meaningful game, which makes it tough. With regard to Ricardo Pepi, I think you said this well in the recap. He does a lot of the little stuff really well, even if he's not scoring.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to absolve him from needing to score because he had a sitter. But you know who also missed sitters this weekend? Mo Salah, Harry Kane, Son. Every big player in the world missed some sitters, you know. And so I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to excuse him from that because that's a tap. And the kind of striker that he is, that's what you expect him to score 99 out of 100 of those. But he still does a number of these things better than any other striker that we have. His hold-up play, simplifying, bringing players into the game, staying active, you know, little flick-ons, you know, getting good spaces into the box that free up other runners into the box. Those types of things I think he still does better than any other striker that he has, that we have. Having said that, he needs to score his goals. And as this drought continues, I do think maybe there's a break there. I do think maybe there's an opportunity to rotate him back in, not out of the picture, but rotate him back in and go with somebody else, give somebody else an opportunity. Because you can't tell me that an 18-year-old kid linked with likely a transfer record for a kid his age to Europe, who's now put in his transfer request to a club that's trying to get more and more money out of it, isn't going to be a little distraught mentally. There's no blueprint for an 18-year-old to be prepared for that. And I think that's weighing on his performances. Granted, he also had stitches in his foot. He had that injury early, a couple months ago. Not making excuses for the kid. I think that you should actually try somebody else in that spot. I think there's other options out there, like a Daryl Dike. Jordan Pefok is in and out of the lineup. Yes, he's in a hot moment right now. He's shown what he can do with the national team. His hold-up play is good. He's willing to get in the box. Seems more like a super sub for me in terms of big chances, trying to get in the box, kind of like your Bash brothers banging heads in the box type of moment for the national team over a 90-minute type of player for the team right now. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with your sentiments that Pepi does a lot of things well, and he's probably our most, agile or adaptable strikers because he can do, I think, multiple things very well. But scoring goals has to be one of them. And I also don't want to fall into a situation where, and I don't think he feels this way, I'm just saying in general for any position, but nobody should be the default starter, right? You should have to earn your spot. Now, no matter what, any team that you have, any team you coach, you're going to have your 7 or 8 default starters. You have to build around a certain core. But with regard to Ricardo Pepi, because of his age, I don't want him to feel like he's our number. There should be some pressure. You need some pressure, right? You need him to feel like, hey, if I don't play well, somebody else is going to come in and get that opportunity. And right now, I feel like he's gotten a lot of runouts when maybe he hasn't necessarily deserved another run out. And that if we had someone who was kind of clipping his heels a little bit more, maybe we'd be in a different situation. I don't know. It's just interesting.
I agree. It's one of those things where you always go back to, and this was the Josh Sargent argument for a long time, where he was young, he had a lot of potential, and you go, yeah, but he's not really playing all that well. He doesn't score goals for his club team. And then you have to go, yeah, but if not him, then who? Right? And then we got a Daryl Dike, and then we got a Jordan Pefok, and then we got a Ricardo Pepi. And then you go, well, not Sargent anymore because now you have these guys. And the same thing goes for Pepi now, where you go, well, if not Pepi, then who? And I think that's still a tough argument. If it's not going to be Daryl Dike, I don't know who else that could be. Maybe you could play a Timo Weah there. Maybe you have the opportunity to put in Jordan Morris as a false 9 or have a floating 3 across your top line.
Christian Pulisic's playing false 9 for Chelsea right now in the last
yeah,
two
but
games.
Chelsea are what are they, 4th in the Premier League?
I'm just saying they're 3rd. But what I'm saying is that even Thomas Tuchel is trying to entrust a player that we use in a position where that's interesting. It's like Sergiño Dest playing right wing all of a sudden, Yeah. That's interesting. He's doing it for Barcelona. Pulisic's doing it for Chelsea. Maybe we should consider it for the U.S. men's national team. I'm just throwing that out there for a conversation piece. But Pepi, for me, is still the number one. Dike, I don't know what happened there. why he's not getting the look or whatever. There is a January camp, everybody. It's been confirmed, January 6th, a couple weeks leading up until the next qualifying window. So that'll be important. Very curious to see if Dike goes, because I'm sure that's a valuable time for him to make a move in a January transfer window, maybe potentially to another club. So over in Europe, obviously. So we'll see.
Yeah, all the best footballers are leaving Orlando. They just happen to play for the NWSL team.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yes, Josh Sargent's basically fallen off a cliff. I think we could do a whole podcast on, did he make the right decision by going to Norwich? I think the easy answer is no, he did not make the right decision. Maybe should have stayed and gone to a better Bundesliga team and cut his teeth in the German Bundesliga. I don't know. That's maybe conversation for another time. Pefok, obviously, as you mentioned, in and out of the lineup. Yes, he scored 4 goals. Jordan Pefok's given me that Hercules Gomez, Edson Buttle vibe from the 2010 World Cup team, who kind of just played really, really well in the 3 months leading up to the World Cup. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like we're going to see 1 or 2 of these strikers just kind of light it up. I happened to go through it in 2006 when it was between Taylor Twellman and Brian Ching, who were just scoring like 2 or 3 goals every game for 3 months or something crazy. And they ended up going with Ching over Twellman. But you know, there's just going to be a hot hand that it's so undeniable. You got to bring him in. And maybe Pefok's getting started too soon on his with 4 goals this past weekend. But it might warrant bringing him back in because, to your point, I think he can play a role for us, unless we want to play one of one of our shifty wingers into that false 9 spot and try to create numerical advantages in a different way. That feels very opponent-based, but it's nice to have that as an option.
Can I say to Dan, who's saying clearly the Pefok votes are recency bias, though, that was the whole point of the vote, is if the game was tomorrow, the whole point is recency bias. Like, who are you going with tomorrow? Obviously, Pefok coming off of 4 goals, that is an extreme recency bias. However, you know, when you weigh that against Ricardo Pepi, I would still go with Pepi at the moment, just because of some of the other things that he does. And I do think that it's a little bit harsh to say, and it's hard because you look at the chance that he had and you're like, that is a clear-cut chance he should finish that every single time, and completely missed it. And Jordan Morris also had a diving header that had a wide open goal, put it right down the middle. Goalkeeper makes a great save. But if Jordan Morris finishes that, maybe we talk different about Pepi. If Pepi finishes that, we talk different about Jordan Morris in terms of needing that goal late in the game. It changes the whole context of needing to finish your chances when you get them. Because against that Bosnia team, there's still an argument to say you shouldn't need more than 2 chances to score, but you should be creating way more than 2 chances against that team with the squad that we put out on the field.
I guess the big question for me is, if we're going to start to commit to a certain group of number 9s, I would like to get that solved sooner rather than later, so we can start to build that rapport, so that we can start to say, hey guys, in this type of situation, we're going to run out this guy. Or if we're down a goal, this guy's coming on the field.
Give me a couple situations that you would, how you would use. Give me 3 strikers that you would bring in as your 3. And it could be a midfielder striker. It could be a Tim Weah. It could be a Christian Pulisic. Give me a couple contexts in which you would build that team.
That's a good question. I'd start with Pepi. I think Pepi's the one that can do a little bit of everything. He can get in behind. He can hold up the ball. He's got good timing and awareness when he's making runs into the box. And even though he's 18 years old, which is crazy, he's only going to get better at that, because it looks like he's got the right attitude and grit and determination to continue to push. So even when things aren't going well, as we mentioned, he's still doing the little things, which I appreciate. Not to say those other guys don't, but I think it still provides maybe a little bit more value in how he contributes based on some of the other players. Jordan Pefok, amazing super sub for me. We saw him score that header against Honduras in the Nations League semifinal, where he came off the bench and scored, in the 87th, 89th minute or something, and really was the spark that came off the bench and gave us a different look, a little bit more physical. And I think also you could keep Pepi and Pefok on, and now that becomes quite of a challenge for any center backs who are tired in a game, and you throw on another strong striker.
I miss the 2-striker.
I do
miss
too,
the
dude.
2-striker setup, man. I hated playing against the 2-striker setup, and nobody does it anymore.
No.
And I don't know what it was for you, but being one-on-one for an entire game as a center back, knowing that you always had that target striker, somebody running those diagonals off. I miss that system, at least giving it a try or being able to rotate into that. So
no. And here's a good question from Zach. Zach says, I got something for you. The new Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey combo. It's Pefok and Matthew Hoppe. We haven't actually brought up Matthew Hoppe in a while. He's been hurt with Mallorca. Hasn't really got off to really any kind of start. Yeah, he got some minutes. Maybe he got an assist. I think he missed a couple of chances. Nothing's really.
He scored against Real Madrid, didn't he?
Didn't he score against Real Madrid?
Was it an assist against Real Madrid? It was one of the two.
He came out firing. Like there was still that Matthew Hoppe confidence and energy, but it's been a really slow burn since then. And it doesn't seem like Gregg really trusts him or hasn't put him in any meaningful games. I mean, he's going with Areola and Jesus Ferreira.
Well, he wasn't playing much, and then he was out for 6 weeks at the start of November. So that buries him pretty far down the lineup.
I think we both like Matthew Hoppe. He has something, right? He will take that risk. He does run at players. But if he doesn't have that confidence, then I feel like he's just not as sharp, not as good. And that confidence feels very important for him in particular. Matthew Hoppe is an interesting one. I feel like he went from being like, I think he's one of our guys that we can lean on. He's interesting. You can put up there as well. We've already saw even with Schalke that he's good at running in behind, making those little quick runs in between. Like you lay it off to the attacking mid and you make that little darting run between the two center backs and get on the end of things. He's got some of that. He could be a dark horse. But again, I think Hoppe falls into the Pefok area where who's going to be hot at that right moment? Who's going to be hot 2 or 3 months before the World Cup or before we have to name the roster? I think is going to really make or break a Matthew Hoppe unless he starts to go on some crazy tear for Mallorca. Yeah. It's interesting. I will say one more thing. Dike, I would love to see him just get another like a legitimate run. Not this 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Like give him 90 minutes. Let the guy try to impress you again, or 75 at a minimum. And see what that looks like. And I just don't know if he's going to get it. I don't know what's going on there, but and I don't have any inside information on that. I DM with DK every once in a while, my flex of the day, but I just feel like, do I really want to ask him? Because then I feel like I'm asking as like I'm not a journalist. I'm like a faux journalist, but I feel like I'm prying too much. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'd rather just be his buddy. So I try to just stay out of asking anything too personal or with regard to his situation. But I would love to see him get back out there. And I think he is a guy that could start as well based on the opponent. If we know that there's a team that likes to play out of the back or whatever, and their center backs are a little soft. I just like when DK can just run through everybody. I like that we have a little bit of that as an option. Now he can hold up the ball as well. I think there is a little bit of a knock on his game that he needs to get better at that side of things. But what I love, and one of the hardest things to teach, is that you can't always see what you want to do. Sometimes you let the ball hit you and then you're making decisions. I can see that Dike wants and sees the decisions he should make. Now it's just a matter of, can he just clean that up? And I think that's the easier of the two things. If you can't see where you should be laying it off, then we have a bigger problem.
That's all. That's
all what it is.
Yeah. I mean, and this is my problem with Josh Sargent, is that it's always felt like, I don't know if he sees it or not, but his decision-making is too slow. It takes him too long to make the decisions needed to keep the attack going. And this is why I always default back to Pepi. Yes, I do think Pepi is still the best natural-born goal scorer we've ever had. And I think that will show itself over time. Please don't let me down, Pepi, because I'm starting to sweat a little bit over here. But if you watch the things that he does, the way he mixes his game up, right? He knows when to check in and just lay a ball off. He knows when there's a flick on to spin out and get going into the box again. He knows when there's an easy layoff. He knows how to bring other players in. And all of those things we've never had from any of our strikers. It takes our strikers more often than not, if it's a target striker, 3 touches to get the ball down under control to lay it off. When Ricardo Pepi does it, if he gets pulled out to the sideline to get the ball, he knows exactly what he's doing. Take a good touch, lay it off, and get back up near the goal again. And I think there's just this maturity when I watch his game, that there's so little wasted from him still. And there was a couple times in the game where he did drift out wide and had a bad turnover, a bad pass back and things like that. And we're all overanalyzing everything Ricardo Pepi does. Now every single touch gets overanalyzed. But I still think he does all of those things better than anybody else that we have. And over 90 minutes, that contributes more to the quality players around him, so that you know that you're not just looking at Pepi to be the only one that can score goals when you have Christian Pulisic on the field, Gio Reyna, when you have, any of these other players, Weston McKennie, when you have Brennan Aronson, when you have all these guys on the field. Now Pepi has a role to play that's not just about scoring goals. Yes, he's going to be called upon to do that, but it's also about using those other skill sets that I just mentioned to make all those other players on the field better around him.
So a lot of people in the comments are suggesting Timothy Weah, and I went and looked to see his minutes right now for Lille. He's played 744 minutes for Lille this season, only 3 assists, 0 goals. But what I found interesting was that when he plays out at the right midfield spot, or even as a right winger, 5 appearances, 1 assist. Okay. Mm-hmm. On the left side, 2 appearances, no assists. As attacking midfield, like more centrally located, 1 appearance there, no assists. But as a center forward, as the guy, it's the number 9. That's actually where he's highest rating on who scored. He's got 3 appearances, 1 assist, but by far he's been performing better at that number 9 spot. I find that very interesting. And again, he's another player that I think maybe can provide a different type of look and feel than what Dike can provide, or Pefok, or Pepi, or Sargent, So there's something about Timothy Weah. He's another confidence guy, though. When he's playing well and feeling good about stuff,
that's all that for him. But he's lightning when he's got the right type of setup, the right type of game plan, the right type of team that he's playing against. He's incredible and stands out immediately as the guy that you want to get the ball to. I also read that there's a link that he's being rumored as a move to Sevilla, I believe, in January, that they might be coming in for a move for him. I don't know if that's great, though. Is it great? I mean, where does he fit into a Sevilla side?
They have issues up top. They have Nesri, who is another guy who's injury prone. Lucas Ocampos, who I love, just scored the winner against Atleti this past weekend. He feels like a little bit more of an out-and-out winger, so maybe you could have some interchange there. They got Papu Gomez, who's obviously more of a number 10 than an out-and-out winger. They could use some depth there, to be honest.
Yeah, but do we need Ricardo? I mean, do we need Timo Weah to be a depth guy? Does that
he's
help
already
us at all? He's already a depth guy at Lille.
Exactly. I don't know. I mean, there might be some moves for some Lille players. Jonathan Ikone is being, talked about and moving. Renato Sanchez obviously is another one. Jonathan David, though I think they'll probably hold on to him till the summer. I don't know. I mean, he's still a depth guy there, so you kind of have to wait and see. Or maybe he just wants to wait his turn. Barak Yilmaz, who plays up top, is, 75 years old, still doing it. So it's interesting. Now, here's a question for you and everybody else that's listening. We got a good one here from Derp. Says Lille plays with a low block, so Weah at strikers running at the other team. He doesn't have to go back to goal at Lille, even if he's the number 9. That's a fair point. Do you think, or would you even want to see Christian Pulisic as a false 9 or anybody else? Because what's interesting is if you put a Pulisic there, who has shown he can do it. He already did it against Real Madrid in the Champions League semifinals last year, where he got in behind the defense. He has some very well-timed runs, and I actually was pretty impressed with him as he scored in that game too. Now, that's an option. And then you could bring in a Gio Reyna and Brendan Aronson could all be on the field at the same time, or a Timo Weah, or De La Fuente is not even part of the picture anymore. It doesn't feel like it. We have, it gives us a kind of a different look, and you got Musa and McKinney kind of joining the attack, and now we got a front 5 or 6 that's super dynamic. Is that something you would consider, Heath Pearce, and everybody else that's listening or watching?
It's hard. I mean, I like my biggest problem with Pulisic anyway is how far he drifts back. Now, I'm fine with him playing as a false 9. I'm okay with that. But you need to have some verticality from the players around you. Now, Brendan Aronson can stretch a team behind, but Brendan Aronson also likes to be drifting into the pockets or the half spaces. And so you're going to get a very crowded area. We already struggle enough trying to break down a low block against teams that I just wonder if we have everybody drifting back and we don't have enough players with that intelligence and that final ball. If you look at the way Man City break down teams, and now I'm talking about the U.S. men's national team in context of Man City, which is great. Great. I can't wait to get crushed for this one. But those abilities, listen, when you think about Kun Aguero and those little tiny darting runs of like 3-4 yard sprints where it's just these little tiny movements and the quality of that passing that you have to have if you're going to play against teams in a low block and you have a false 9 in that system, you've got to be very, very good, very patient on the ball, but you have to have ideas. You have to have courage. You also have to have a good pressing game. I'm talking about all these factors that don't have anything to do with just Christian Pulisic alone, but him being there means that all of the other pieces around him have to be just a step higher or better or more dynamic than I think we currently have them. That's at least my take on that. And then he's going to end up drifting back, and then all of a sudden we've got a whole bunch of midfielders on the field.
No, that's a good point, and I appreciate that. With regard to your comparison to Manchester City, I don't have any problem when we compare the U.S. or an MLS team to a big club or whatever it is, because we know that everybody has somewhat of a familiarity with that big club. If all of a sudden he's like, they're playing like Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, you'd be like, I don't know anything about Feyenoord, so what the hell are you talking about? So we have to give those comparisons because I think it's important that there are some similarities, of course, to how certain players move and obviously the systems that we're trying to play that replicate some of the success that the big clubs are having. So the haters can just quiet down a little bit with regard to the comparisons. With regard to Christian Pulisic, I like that we have that as a potential option. We still haven't talked about really at length about Serginho Dest playing a little bit higher up the field too, because he's shown to have some pretty good quality when he's also another player playing with confidence and is healthy and knows that he's got the belief of the coach behind him. I don't think he's in that particular position at the moment, and I think he's been struggling with it since then. But there is something I like about it, and we've seen some sample sizes, and we've seen Tuchel use and utilize Pulisic in a way that makes his darting runs. And I look back at the Real Madrid game that they played in the semifinal away from home, and he scored the first goal. He got in behind the defense, and he wasn't dropping back in so much. And I feel like maybe when he represents our country, he feels like he's got to do more than he should. Whereas when he's with Chelsea, and you've done this before, right? When you play with the national team, or maybe even with your club, maybe it's the opposite, where you try to do too much for your club because you just came from the national team. But for whatever reason, it just feels like Christian is trying to do too much. Maybe because he feels like he has to, because of all the hype around him or whatever. Whereas with Chelsea, he's just one of 15 players that gets about the same amount of hype, you know? And so there's a little bit more of a comfort level knowing that he doesn't have to do everything. If the team doesn't do well, it's not all on his shoulders. And maybe he feels that responsibility with the US and tries to do a little bit too much. But if Gregg could say, hey, listen, we just need you to make those darting runs to kind of go from inside to out, pull some center backs out of space. Then we can run the McKennies through. We can run the Weahs and potential Aaronsons, Arena through and try to create that. Because what's interesting when you say about Brendan Aronson making those runs, he does it from deeper. So he's going from inside to out, which I think impacts the outside back a little bit more. Maybe it pulls the center back. But if you had someone who's as shifty and quick as these players are, if you could have them start between the two center backs and then try to get in behind them or pull them wide, that's just something to consider, which I don't think is a bad option. Obviously, I'd rather have a proper number 9 for these guys to run off of. But just in terms of having this hypothetical conversation, I find it interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and again, not to go too deep into the tactics, but let's put this into context. And I want everybody else's take on this too. The next games are home against El Salvador, right? Away to Canada, home against Honduras. We talk about this being 7 to 9 points, pretty much sets you up to qualify for the World Cup. So in that first game against El Salvador, a team that they should definitely beat at home,
who are going to be sitting in a low block, by the way.
Yeah, of course they are. And they're going to defend like hell. They are going to make it miserable for the U.S. team to try to break them down. I mean, who do you go with in the context of that? I mean, we talked about it before. Ricardo Pepi in the low block means he doesn't get a lot of touches. So that means he's got to finish his chance. Christian Pulisic's going to go looking for a ball. Is somebody going to go in to fill in that space? I mean, if you had to have your front three or give me your attacking four against El Salvador, that not necessarily who you think Gregg's going to put out, but who do you think has the best chance of breaking down a low block playing at home to get the result?
Well, if we're trying to do it like we did against Bosnia, which is just play around the edges the whole time and never actually take a risk and whip a ball in until we did at the very end, and that led to a goal. Yeah, then yeah, if you're going to do that and that's how you feel like you're going to break them down and try to create these really pretty 1-2s in and around the outside backs to hit hard low crosses, we don't necessarily need a big guy, right? If that's your tactic, and maybe having a Pulisic and an Aronson and Arena and a Weah and all these guys that are good in those 1v1 situations and maybe can create a little bit from a little bit, or create a lot from a little bit of space, then I don't know if you need a Pepi out there to the points that you made. But if you've got a sense that, all right, we need to get in an area where we're crossing from deep, we're trying to create chaos inside their box, and we're going to whip balls in early, then I think you have to have a bigger body out there. So that could be Pepi, who could lay it off. You could be two strikers. That'll never happen, but I think you and I are dreaming that maybe one day that does. And then you have two big boys out there, or one big boy out there that's knocking things down, and then we have everybody else kind of crashing that second ball and trying to create opportunities off of that. It just kind of depends on how you think El Salvador is going to set up and what you want to do as a team. And if it's trying to be pretty and plain aesthetically pleasing, then I think there'd be some value in having a false nine with one of our more often not considered a winger per se. But it's going to be a long night for whoever plays that 9 spot, whether it's a false 9 or a Pepi. When you have 8 or 9 El Salvadorans sitting right on top of the box, it's not going to be a pretty game, and we're going to have a lot of possession. My fear is, and Canada did it very well when we played Canada at home, you get hit on the counter. Now, El Salvador doesn't have an Alphonso Davies, but we have shown that we can be vulnerable on the counter at times. Even against Bosnia, when they had 10 men, there were some 2v2 and 3v3 situations with experienced players on the field. It's not like they're the young guys. It was Acosta and Roldan and Zimmerman, right? These are the guys. And we were still getting countered. So a better team might have made us pay for that type of stuff. So these are the things we have to think about. But I'm all for just having that urgency right from the get-go and not trying to feel the game out. Let's go set the tone right away.
I fully agree. And, in terms of a front four, when we talk about Bosnia, we actually created numerical advantages and overloads on the side that, the in, back, and through opportunities like that. But against an El Salvador that may be even deeper, it's hard to find those spaces, right? You're going to have to be able to probe teams and really pulse teams in and out of those spaces that are going to really take chances, because they're going to be like, all right, sit in our 2 deep blocks. You can hit it from 30 yards. You're not scoring against us with that. Maybe on a deflection, maybe if you keep on trying, but we're going to frustrate you. And then eventually you're going to feel like the answer to your problems, like you said, is to send an extra number or 2 forward. And that's when we're going to counterattack on you and humble you on a counterattack when you're vulnerable. And so I worry about that regardless of who we have on the field. Just generally, I think we really struggle to break down a low block. But whether that's Pulisic or it's Pefok or it's Ricardo Pepi, I'm not sure what the right answer is. I don't think it's Christian Pulisic, because I think the more you can feed Pepi underneath and Pulisic can come up facing the field and getting the ball at his feet, driving at the game, I think we're in a better place, similar to what we saw against Honduras, as opposed to Christian Pulisic drifting back with his back to the game. I think is not where we want Christian Pulisic.
No, I agree with you 100%. I like that thought. I'd rather have a number 9, but I just thought for hypothetical reasons and because we're actually seeing Christian Pulisic in real time, starting in the false 9 spot for Chelsea. It's a conversation worth having. Now, for everybody that's new here, or if you're not new here but haven't hit the buttons that we need you to hit that like and subscribe button and turn off your notifications. Of course, you never miss a U.S. Men's National Team Hour. We appreciate your support here on the Qué Golazo YouTube channel. As a reminder, for scheduling purposes, Heath and I will be back next week for the U.S. Men's National Team Hour. We'll have our end of the year awards for the U.S. Men's National Team. I'm sure that'll get a little bit dicey and fun, so you got to come back for that for sure. We might even dress up. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Potentially might even dress up for
What do they want us to wear? What do they want us to wear?
Yeah, I don't know. We got some old U.S. Men's National Team jerseys we can throw out there. I don't have the denim one from the 94 World Cup, sadly, but maybe one day. All right. Now, speaking of awards, let's transition into U.S. Soccer. Handed out there.
Segue.
You like that?
Good segue.
Like
that?
That?
Strong. I like that. Good
Thank
one.
you very much. So, Christian Pulisic just picked up the award for the best male player in U.S. Soccer this year in 2021. Do you agree with that decision?
Oh, man. I find it hard to think about another player when I put it into context that was more deserving, right? Brenden Aaronson would have been my only standout one, just because of the impact he's had on the team. I think when I think about it from a fan perspective, Brenden Aaronson is the one that's made me fall in love with this team again, right? Just because of the energy, the fight, the passion, very Clint Dempsey-esque of like, give me the ball, let's go, let's get after these teams. And just that like excitement around the team again, that there's this like, this young, lanky kid who doesn't seem like he should be out there, is like, nah, let's go. And I like that about him. And he's been really impactful in that context. Kellen Acosta has an argument because he's been the most capped, and he just set a record in this year for having the most caps ever in a calendar year for the national team. Weston McKennie, less so, obviously. Matt Turner, I think, makes sense, but he's not even the starter.
9 clean sheets. Nine clean sheets,
but he's not like. I mean, how could U.S. Soccer vote him in when he's not even the number one?
Okay,
he's not even the number one.
That's fair. That's fair. Miles Robinson, 13 games, 3 goals, including the game winner in the Gold Cup final. I mean, as a former center back, I'm kind of leaning. I like Miles Robinson, but I
do like the Miles Robinson, but I look at Christian Pulisic and I go back to, this is more of like, okay, some big moments for the national team, right? Okay, and then Chelsea, Champions League, wins the Champions League. It's just hard for me to argue against that type of season when I think about it just through the lens of national team games only. It's hard because Christian Pulisic isn't always playing in them. And quite frankly, I think I continuously think about Brenden Aaronson and the impact that he's had this year. I go, okay, that's the guy that I would love to give the award to, just because he deserves it in a different way. But Christian Pulisic is still Christian Pulisic, and it's hard to argue his 12 months isn't one of the greatest 12 months that this national, or that an American player has ever had, ever regardless of his bits and moments where he hasn't been at his best with the national team. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's hard. As everybody knows, if you've watched this or listened to it, I'm a big Brenden Aaronson fan, and I really like that he stepped up in the absence of Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic. And for the reasons that you mentioned, there's something about his attitude towards the game and his approach to the game that I think we're drawn to. He's just, okay, things aren't going great for me. I'm still going to try to figure out a way to be positive and influential in this game. And I've seen interviews with him. We got to interview him on HQ as well. That
he was poor. He was poor in the last camp, though. He wasn't great. He wasn't great in this last round of qualifiers.
No, he wasn't. And actually, either is his club team. RB Salzburg was going through a bit of a lull, and they weren't. They went from being undefeated and like hanging with Sevilla in Spain to having a bit of a drop off. And maybe he's just part of that lull in particular and trying to figure out a way. Now they fought through it a little bit. Obviously, qualified for the knockout rounds, the first Austrian club to do so. So we're going to get to see Brenden Aaronson in the round of 16 of the Champions League, which I think is very, very special.
And should have been counted, by the way, in context of this award. We're talking
it should
about,
have. It should have.
It's not RB Leipzig. This is RB Salzburg. And
that's right. And they got Bayern Munich over 2 legs. I mean, what better platform for him to showcase what he's capable of than against Bayern Munich?
He's being linked to AC Milan and all these other big clubs. So let's see him show up in this, and then hopefully he gets spot.
Yeah. So this is obviously another big year for Brenden Aaronson. I thought he took big strides. This is the 3rd time Christian Pulisic has won the award. And I think because he had these key moments of scoring the winner against Mexico in the Nations League final, scoring the winner against
They're very
Mexico
Landon Donovan-esque moments.
They are.
Very
they
Landon
really
Donovan
are.
moments, where you and I both know in the context of that, I've been in games with Landon where I go, where is he? I need him to show up. He's not doing the Landon Donovan things that I need. And then he shows up when he needs to show up. But you suffer without him at times. And the same thing with Pulisic. You suffer without him until he arrives in these big moments and delivers.
Well, what's funny is if we actually really pull it back, he didn't start in that Champions League final. He had a chance and missed it, if you remember, which would have iced the game. It was a 1-0 win. If everyone remembers.
That was the little scoop chance.
He missed it. Yeah. He missed it. Okay. But it's still important for a visibility standpoint and for the belief system that's going to provide for young Americans that are coming through and following Christian Pulisic, who are motivated by him and have Christian Pulisic posters in their room, that him winning the Champions League is going to be a watershed moment, I think. And I think we're going to see in a lot of next generation kids go, I wanted to do this and I wanted to be this successful because I saw Christian Pulisic do it. And I think that's important. In the game against Mexico in the Nations League final, he played on the left side. Serginho Dest was behind him. And Mexico, I thought, did an excellent job of keeping Pulisic quiet and making him, to your point about him before, dropping very deep to go get the ball. And when he did get the ball, he does very well of that half turn, exploding into space and forcing you to foul him. He's so good at that. I mean, he might be one of the best players in the world at that. I can't imagine. He gets fouled so much, but he's so good at that kind of stop, half turn, explode into the little space there and get fouled. But he didn't play particularly well in that game, but he stepped up, to your point, in a Landon Donovan-esque moment and scored a great penalty, by the way, with a ton of pressure. And then, of course, all you remember is that iconic photo of him shushing without his shirt on.
His first of 2 iconic
yes.
photos.
And then when you go to the Mexico game in the World Cup qualifying, he didn't start either. And he came on, but when he came on, he made an immediate impact and scored. And again, gave us another man on the mirror type iconic moment. And that's what he's been doing. And I think that's what speaks to his quality. And that's ultimately why he won the award. But if we're talking about a player that took the biggest steps right now in their career to really push on their own individual career, and then they're push on the U.S. men's national team to stay good during a time when it looked like, man, Pulisic and Reyna are out. Who's going to be the guy? Aaronson was one of those people that stepped up. Pepi was another one, but he won the Young Player of the Award. So he got his recognition. Miles Robinson would be another guy that I think took full advantage of his opportunity with the Gold Cup, and he pushed out, we could argue, John Anthony Brooks, or maybe Walker Zimmerman, or a combination of both did that. Now I'm curious about your Brooks thing, but I just wanted to give some context on that. So let's talk about the Young Player of the Year. That goes to Ricardo Pepi. Are you any thoughts on that, or because there was Bello?
Yeah, Bello. No, Busio was one where I was
Musa's the only one.
Yeah, but Musa, to me, again, is in the context of the last games that he played with the national team, right? Like when I think about the last year, injured some, didn't play a ton with Valencia to start this campaign, still looking for minutes, consistent minutes with Valencia. And then when I see him on the national team, I just love to watch him play. And his performances are just surprising every time because of how mature he is, how powerful he is, how confident he is on the ball. that I don't think leads you to an award necessarily. When I think about that, I think about the year that was for Gianluca Busio going to a Serie A club, having to prove himself, going through the Gold Cup, trying to work his way through things and constantly taking steps forward as a player, developing, like seeing somebody develop in front of our eyes versus seeing a Yunus Musa who you're like, oh, wow, that guy's good. We need him on the field more often. I thought it's just the difference for me. And so when I think about the full context of all that, I look at Busio and I go, okay, there was an argument for Busio there. I don't think Bello really. I mean, an incredible year for him as well. But it all goes back to me thinking about Pepi, and I go, if not Pepi, then who? And when I think about those players, I'm like, there wasn't anybody in regards to a young player that I was like more standout than this. By the way, there was arguments that Kevin Paredes was one that had similar stats and minutes to Ricardo Pepi and was a left midfielder, left defender.
Yeah, and I'm curious about the future of Kevin Paredes. If he's not involved heavily this cycle, I bet you he'll be somebody we're talking about a lot in the next cycle leading up to the 2026 World Cup. All right, before we call it a day here at the U.S. Men's National Team Hour, I can't believe it's almost been an hour. We love talking about this stuff, and we love talking about it with you. So make sure you hit like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. If you're listening, hit subscribe. Leave us a 5-star rating. That would be much appreciated so we can keep giving you the goods, the free stuff. We are 336 days away from the start of the World Cup, Heath Pearce. Mm-hmm. And so just to have some fun, I'm actually going to put you on the spot here, Hollywood.
Thank you.
Who's your starting lineup? Who do you think is going to be the starting lineup for that first game? Listen, I'm already going out there and saying we're qualifying, okay? I've got confidence in our boys. We're way too talented to botch it like we did the last time around. We're going to learn from that. So let's just say we qualify. We're going to qualify. I don't think I could. I mean, this podcast would melt if we didn't qualify for a second consecutive World Cup, which could happen to Italy, by the way. So it's not just isolated to us over here. But what are your thoughts on who our lineup potentially will be for that first one, assuming everybody's healthy?
I'm actually disappointed in my own lineup that I would give, and I'm going to make it in real time, so I haven't really thought it through. I'm saying I'm disappointed to preface the fact that I actually would have loved to have had a distance hot take of one of the young players that were in this camp in December. But now I've got nothing to give you from those players. I've got nothing to be like, well, I think
because we saw him for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
dude.
No, okay, Cade Cowell or Caden Clark, they're going to sneak in, and like that I had hoped because I had seen a ton of potential in these guys, and I was like, okay, can they make the next step? So I'm going to go with Robinson's a starter. Okay, let's go with the goalkeeper.
So goalkeeper. Zach Steffen.
Zach Steffen.
Yeah, I think you're going to play the goalkeeper that can play with his feet.
I think Jedi Robinson left back.
Yeah.
I think. Joe Scally's one. Man, this is tough.
It is tough.
Okay, now I'm getting in trouble.
If anybody else wants to
another
join
player
in,
that I haven't. Yeah, I would love to know everyone's thought because in 12 months, Joe Scally.
I think Joe Scally can play the right side, honestly. But go ahead.
I just don't think you leave Serginho Dest off by that point. I mean, hopefully he's in a better place in 12 months from now.
No, he could still be a wing back if we want to play 3 center backs. But go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, so don't try to talk me out of my lineup. Jimmy, make your own lineup. Jeez Louise, you almost had me too. You almost had me. I was ready to give it to you. I'm gonna go with Joe Scally. I'm gonna go with Robinson. I'm gonna go with Walker Zimmerman. I'm gonna go with Serginho Dest. Aaron Long could be back in it. I know Greg loves him, but I'm not going with Greg. I'm going with what I want. And then I'm going MMA in my midfield.
Okay.
And then for my front three, I'm going to go with Ricardo Pepi, Gio Reyna, and no. I'm going Brendan Aronson. Ricardo Pepi. No. God. Well, who's in our group, Jimmy? Who's in our group? Jeez,
I don't know who's in our group. I mean, obviously
okay,
that will
I'm going to go with take out MMA. I'm taking out Musa. I'm putting in Gio Reyna, Tyler Adams, and McKennie. And then up top, I'm going with Brendan Aronson, Ricardo Pepi, and Christian Pulisic. That's my team. I'm not changing it again. I got no time for this.
Okay.
It's frustrating. What do you got?
No, it's not too much different. Zach Steffen for sure. I mean, I would love to take a stab at it and say Joe Scally at right. God, that's been tough. I'll go Zimmerman and Robinson. I think we will see that. assuming everybody stays healthy and continues to grow at the same rate, right? You got to take all that into consideration.
I mean, we are 12 months out, by the way. That's
300 almost 336.
Oh my gosh, dude!
It's a long time. It's a long time.
Literally change this entire team in that.
We could. Anthony Robinson for sure. So Jedi Robinson, and then on the right side, I still feel like we might. I guess it's going to depend on the opponent, but I could see us potentially going with 3 center backs or like 2 center backs and like a Yedlin or something, and then having Dest out wide right. I think we tried that once, and
I'm not even taking Yedlin to the World Cup.
You're not taking Yedlin, taking Scally. You think Scally's going to beat out Yedlin?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we're talking about 12 months.
I got MMA for sure. And then up top, I'm going to say Pepi will hopefully continue to emerge as our number 9. Pulisic's in there for sure. And then the Gio Reyna, Brendan Aronson conversation is an interesting one. Gio's got to get healthy and get back to being sharp as soon as possible.
I want to see I so badly want to see Gio with Pepi playing together because that could be incredible.
So what I'll say is this. Hard. No. I'll say Gio Reyna over Aronson because I think Aronson.
Yeah, you're a coward.
As much as I love Gio Reyna, I think that Brendan Aronson is a better super sub and will approach that role maybe a little bit better than Gio. And I think if Gio's starting, and his dad played in 4 World Cups, so there's got to be.
You sound like Claudio's best friend.
Well, I'm just saying his dad played in 4 World Cups, and so there's got to be some DNA that resonates for a reason. So I'll go with Gio, Christian, Pepi, MMA in the midfield, and I'm not sold completely on Serginho Dest. I think he's still much of a defensive liability, and I think Scally's shown to be a little more resolute and tougher to break down in that sense. And I think we might need that, depending on the opponent, right? So. I don't know. I don't think that right back spot is wide open, but everything else I feel pretty good about.
All right, that's fair. I mean, Yedlin's, other than the pace that I don't even think he has as much of anymore, is still defensive liability in my book as well. By the way, Jedi Robinson hasn't been good in the last camp either. He's been a little bit. He
just had a baby though, dude.
A little bit.
He just had some off the field stuff go on. So like when you have a baby, man, it just changes things. I mean, that's just for better or for worse, it just changes things because all that free time that you used to have, it doesn't exist anymore. And your sleeping habits change. And it's just a new rhythm in your life. And it's a great rhythm. But at times, especially when it first happens, it does impact. You can speak to it. I have kids as well when we were playing. And it does impact some things that are happening. Your focus is just a little bit different. So I think he'll get through that. But yeah, I can understand why he's not maybe playing at the top. Like he once was. And I'm not worried about him. He's going to be fine. So is there any shock, like Landon Donovan-esque surprises where, Gregg's going to be Jurgen Klinsmann and leave off somebody? Or has he already done that by his movement with John Anthony Brooks?
I mean, it could be Brooks. The Brooks thing, he could swing all the way back the other way. If Brooks goes on a crazy run of form, maybe he gets an exit from Wolfsburg and finds new life somewhere else and is just one of those players that forces himself into the team. And I don't think it's about equality for him. It's more about like a maturity of like, can you be a good teammate and perform? I think that's going to be the special sauce that gets him back into it. But I do think there's going to be one shock somewhere in here.
Do you feel like a shock with one of his favorites? Like all of a sudden he's going to leave off Leggett, or Acosta?
Oh, I mean, I think there could be. I think there could be a Leggett or Acosta. I think there could be a Zardes left off. I think a Roldan. I think an Areola. I think all of those guys are vulnerable, especially with the fact of that in 12 months we have a lot of this up and coming talent that's coming up. Unfortunately, we didn't see any of them in the last week. Paredes was injured in that game, didn't get the chance to play for this game as well, but it heard he'd been playing really, really well in camp. And so, yeah, there's a number of these players that could change the dynamic of what this team looks like in 12 months. But I do think there's going to be another shock beyond that. And it's going to come to either, injury or lack of playing time, whether it's a Yunus Musa or which would be insane to me, but a Yunus Musa. It could be I'm trying to think who else might not make it with regard to this. I mean, what happens when Aaron Long comes back? What's that mean? Because you've still got Chris Richards, McKenzie. McKenzie's playing again. He's got a new coach. Chris Richards is in and out of his team and playing well. Just scored his first goal. And so yeah, I think there's going to be a few shocks that will probably be justified. I don't think it'll be Landon Donovan-esque in the sense of like, oh wow, okay, this is something different. This is insane actually. But I do think there will be a few shocks of who we currently see in the national team, knowing that we're bringing 26, 27 into every camp. So you're already talking about 4 players that seem critical parts of the team and are in terms of contributing towards qualifying. But making the final roster is very different than how you build a team to qualify in terms of that experience, right?
Sure. No, we've seen
having
it before.
Having said that, Kyle Beckerman did a World Cup. I would have seen, I think Dax McCarty, if they qualified in 2018, would have been that same type of guy for that cycle where he was called upon to play final 10 minutes, put out fires, do those types of things. And so, there could be a couple of those players that just give Gregg Berhalter that warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing, like, I know exactly what I'm going to get from you. It might not be much, but I know exactly what it is. And when I need it, I'm going to call upon it, and you're going to deliver.
I still, honestly, thinking about the Landon Donovan exclusion by Jurgen Klinsmann, I still shake my head. My neck still hurts.
Julian
7 years later.
First touch in the World Cup, Jimmy. Did
I
you
know,
score your first touch?
I did not score with my first touch in the World Cup.
Julian Green did, Jimmy. Julian Green did, which is the most bizarre storyline in the history of football, is that you leave Landon Donovan home, the world goes crazy, and then Julian Green goes onto the field and is his first touch, scores a goal, which is just beyond me because it killed the entire argument, but it doesn't.
It doesn't kill the entire argument. Imagine if you had somebody of Landon, maybe you didn't want to start him, right? But imagine him coming off the bench and having that type of experience and him having more goals, for, 5 World Cup goals. How do you leave that at home just because the guy was having a tough time mentally for a little while and wanted to take a sabbatical or whatever? I don't know. There's obviously, it felt very personal, and hopefully one day we'll get the real story as time progresses and as those wounds start to heal a little bit. But that's crazy. The whole Landon Donovan.
Actually, I met the guy who's writing it. Landon Donovan's releasing an autobiography soon.
He is?
Yeah. I met the guy.
Did he authorize it, or is it unauthorized?
No, it's authorized. It's this guy in San Diego named I don't even know if I'm supposed to say his name, so I won't say it. But he's writing his autobiography, and was getting stories from some of the guys out there at the Nations League final, because obviously Gooch was there and Clint was there and Mo was there and Charlie was there and I was there, and there was a bunch of people out there. And so he was kind of open about the fact that he's writing the story. I always wonder about those stories anyway, but would love to see it. Sometimes they're tell-alls, sometimes they're more of kind of like rags to riches type of thing. So we'll see which way.
Well, I better be in the book, man. I used to pick him up every day for practice when he joined the Earthquakes from Bayer Leverkusen, and his mom would be like, "Hey," she'd call me, "You're gonna pick up Landon today, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go get him."
Hey. So. We should actually start this segment within the show, Jimmy, is your humble brag, like your best story of a single player. Because my claim to fame with Landon Donovan is he was going through his divorce and asked me to help him set up his Facebook account. So I built his Facebook account for him back when Facebook was a thing. Now it's Meta, but it was actually a thing then. And I set him up. I had to follow all these people for him. I had to get him going, teach him how to use all the mechanisms and all that sort of stuff when he was rebuilding his teenage. He was reliving his teens as somebody in their late 20s. We were actually in South Africa for Confederation
sliding
Cup.
into DMs, huh?
Yeah. So it was
wow.
This was pre-Tinder or any of these things. It was Facebook, right? And so I set it up for him with his email and everything like that. Got him going. We were either in South Africa for the Nelson Mandela Challenge or the Confederations Cup, but I can't remember which. But I set it up for him. I think it was the Confederations Cup, because we had a lounge there that we were hanging out, and set him up for that. So that's my humble brag. You may have been picking him up, Jimmy, but I was getting him picked up.
I was at his wedding.
There we go. Jeez,
but obviously it didn't work out. Maybe I'm a bad luck charm. I don't know. Yeah. But that's going to be a hell of a book. He's got a lot of stories to share, I'm sure. And look forward to getting into that. And we got to have him on as a guest once he starts to do his book tour 100% here on the US Men's National Team Hour. Well, it's been an hour, Heath Pearce. Yes. So we are done and finished until next week. And then the week after that and the week after that. But next week is the closeout for the year of 2021. And we're going to give our year-end awards. How excited are you for that, Heath Pearce? Give me your final thoughts.
I'm really excited for it. Hopefully we can build some great award categories so that we can be a little creative with our thinking. I think traditional awards make it very difficult. And I'd like to have a little bit of creativity to perhaps our awards. Maybe Des will come up with a few creative
I got one.
Best.
How about this one? Best Robinson on the U.S. Men's National Team.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a hard one. But yeah, you like that? Cool. Des, got to write that one down. That's a really good one. Best win over Mexico. That's a good one from producer Des.
There's so many. There's so many. It's really hard.
We're gonna have
three. How am I going to pick three out of 3 wins in 1 year over Mexico? How am I going to pick one? They're all just like my own little babies. You love them all the same.
All right, everybody. Well, that's it for this one, but there's plenty more to come from the Qué Golazo family over the festive period over the next few weeks. Christina Cuppo and Dre Cordero will join LME tomorrow for a deep dive in the tightest Serie A title race in eons. Nobody uses that word anymore, just over 50-year-old men, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm not over 50. Eons. The Cooligans will be bringing their mix of footy fandom and comedy on Wednesday. And there, of course, will be more transfer news from Fabrizio Romano on Thursday. And then myself and Heath will be back on Friday for the weekend preview, and then U.S. Men's National Team Hour on Monday. So that should be a lot of fun. So thank you for watching and or listening. As always, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Qué Golazo Pod. Hit the likes, hit the subscribes, keep those comments coming. We appreciate you. You're the best community in the U.S. Men's National Team scene, and we can't wait for next week. We'll see you then. Later.